Hang the corner of a cotton towel in a glass of water and come back in an hour. The water is now at the top, above the water line. That is the entire mechanism. You have a stack of old towels in the back of a closet. They are frayed at the edges, the fabric is wearing thin, and they have been downgraded to floor rags. Eventually, you plan to throw them in the trash. You are about to throw this away, not realizing that you are holding an engineered water transport system. When you place a 100% cotton towel in the right orientation beneath the soil surface, it stops being a household item and becomes a functional wicking layer. The physics here is settled. Capillary action is the ability of a liquid to flow in narrow spaces without the assistance of, or even in opposition to, external forces like gravity. It occurs because of intermolecular forces between the liquid and surrounding solid surfaces. If the diameter of the space is sufficiently small, then the combination of surface tension and adhesive forces between the liquid and container wall act to propel the liquid. Cotton fibers are made of cellulose. Cellulose is highly hydrophilic. It attracts water. A woven cotton towel is essentially millions of microscopic tubes bundled together. When the bottom edge of that towel is introduced to a water source, the adhesive forces between the water molecules and the cellulose fibers are stronger than the cohesive forces holding the water molecules together. The water is pulled upward, defying gravity, moving through the microscopic spaces between the threads. When you water the surface of your garden, you are fighting a losing battle against evaporation. The sun and wind take a significant percentage of that water before it ever reaches the deep root zone. But when you establish a vertical wicking layer using natural cotton, you reverse the dynamic. You can draw water up from a deeper reservoir, delivering it steadily to the soil profile exactly where the roots need it. Why does water move against gravity in a piece of fabric? The answer is in the tension. In soil mechanics, we often talk about matrix potential. This is the force that soil matrices exert on water. The cotton towel acts as an extremely efficient matrix, with a very high matrix potential when dry. When the bottom of the towel touches water, the first few millimeters of cotton fibers become saturated. At the boundary between the wet cotton and the dry cotton, just above it, a meniscus forms in every single microscopic gap between the threads. Surface tension creates a pressure difference across this meniscus. The pressure on the wet side is higher than the pressure on the dry side, forcing the water to move upward into the dry fabric. This process continues until the weight of the water column in the fabric equals the capillary force pulling it upward. Studies on cellulose fabrics find that an active capillary lift of roughly 18 centimeters is standard for tightly woven pure cotton. That means if the bottom edge of the towel is sitting in a wet layer of soil or a small reservoir, the moisture will be drawn up 18 centimeters higher into the soil profile. This is not a theory. Published research on wicking materials in agricultural settings shows that cellulose-based fabrics provide a consistent and predictable moisture transport gradient. The water does not move in a sudden flood. It moves via a slow, steady seep, matching the rate at which surrounding soil pulls the moisture out of the fabric. The positioning is what dictates the success or failure of this mechanism. You are not creating a blanket. You are creating an elevator. The orientation fundamentally dictates whether the fabric serves as an asset or a liability. If you take a long strip of that cotton towel and bury it vertically, extending down into the subsoil where moisture tends to linger longer, you have installed a passive water pump. The vertical orientation maintains the capillary chain perfectly intact. Gravity and capillary forces work in tandem with the soil's natural moisture gradient. As the sun beats down and the top few inches of your soil dry out, the soil tension increases. The dry soil needs moisture. Because the vertical cotton strip is interwoven directly with the soil profile, the dry soil pulls moisture horizontally out of the upper section of the towel. As the top of the towel loses water, the capillary gradient within the fabric increases, pulling more water up from the bottom edge. This creates a continuous, unbroken ascending route for water. When you consider the difference between a vertical and horizontal layout, think about the path of least resistance. The vertical towel mimics the taproot of a mature tree. It establishes a dedicated transit corridor that ignores the horizontal stratification of the soil layers. By hanging the fabric vertically, you ensure that every single woven thread is aligned with the gravitational axis, which ironically allows the capillary forces to work against gravity without being interrupted by lateral soil shifts. If you bury a towel flat, horizontally, it becomes a physical barrier. A horizontal layer of dense fabric interrupts the natural vertical capillary connection of the soil itself. The water no longer has a continuous ascending route. When moisture from deep below tries to rise through the soil via natural capillary action, it hits the broad, flat underside of the towel and stops. The capillary chain is broken. Worse, water hit in a horizontal towel from above will pool on top. The dense weave of the cotton dramatically slows infiltration, potentially causing waterlogging on the surface while the soil beneath the fabric remains dry. Let us visualize the mechanics through a precise soil cross-section to see what this looks like underground. Imagine a slice of the ground 1 foot deep. On the left side of the cross-section, a towel has been buried horizontally, flat under 4 inches of soil. After a heavy rain, the water moves down through the top 4 inches and hits the towel. The soil above the fabric is saturated, heavy, and turning anaerobic. The water is pooling on the cotton surface. Below the towel, the soil profile is pale, bone-dry, and disconnected from the surface hydrology. The horizontal orientation has created a perched water table. On the right side of the cross-section, the towel is buried vertically, like a ribbon hanging straight down from just below the surface to 10 inches deep. Here, rainwater infiltrates freely past the narrow vertical profile. More importantly, as the topsoil begins to dry, you can physically trace a dark, hydrated gradient moving upward through the cotton fibers. The soil at the bottom is moist, the bottom tip of the towel is saturated, and the soil immediately adjacent to the vertical strip remains visibly darker and hydrated, while the bulk soil further away turns light brown and dusty. The vertical placement maintains the natural vertical channels while providing an accelerated pathway for upward capillary movement. Understanding the orientation is critical, but identifying the correct material is equally important. There is a structural difference between 100% natural cotton and synthetic blends. This mechanism only works with pure cellulose. Cotton fibers capillarize water because cellulose is fundamentally hydrophilic. The structure of the fiber itself is designed by nature to attract and transport water molecules. The microscopic spaces between the twisted cotton fibers create the perfect internal geometry for water to climb. Synthetic fibers, such as polyester, nylon, or acrylic, are derived from petroleum. They are essentially spun plastics. These fibers are inherently hydrophobic. They repel water. When you look at a synthetic fiber under a microscope, it is smooth and solid, lacking the porous, irregular surface of natural cotton. The spaces between synthetic fibers do not create the necessary capillary draw because the water molecules have no adhesive attraction to the plastic surface. A polyester towel might hold a little water between its threads temporarily if fully submerged, but it cannot actively pull water upward against gravity in a soil matrix. You must check the label before you bury any fabric. Look for tags that explicitly state 100% cotton. If the label says it contains any percentage of polyester or synthetic material, it will not function efficiently. The synthetic threads will disrupt the continuous capillary network within the fabric, acting as roadblocks for the ascending water. If you are standing in a store or looking at a thrift shop bin, always perform a tactile check if the label is missing. Natural cotton feels soft, slightly irregular, and absorbs a drop of water almost instantly. Synthetic fabrics often feel slick, artificially smooth, and a drop of water will bead up on the surface before slowly soaking in. That surface beading is the ultimate proof that the material lacks the immediate capillary attraction required for this gardening technique. Burying that slick, hydrophobic fabric will only create dead zones in your garden bed where roots refuse to grow and water refuses to travel. Furthermore, you have to consider what happens to the material in the soil environment. Use only 100% cotton. Synthetic fabric does not capillarize water the same way and will not decompose. A natural cotton towel will eventually be consumed by soil bacteria and fungi, breaking down over a year or two and adding valuable carbon back into the soil matrix. A synthetic towel, on the other hand, will persist in your garden forever. It will not break down. It will merely shred into microscopic plastic fibers, polluting your soil and creating permanent impermeable barriers that disrupt natural root growth and fungal networks. The cotton towel is an ally. The synthetic towel is an environmental pollutant. When you apply basic physics to common materials, the entire mechanics of your garden change. If you want to understand the physical principles that actually dictate water movement and soil health, subscribe to the channel. In our next video, we will look at cardboard egg cartons and why they manage humidity better than plastic trays. To correctly install this vertical wicking layer, you must be highly specific about where the bottom tip of the towel terminates. The bottom edge must sit in a zone that reliably holds moisture. This could be a dense lower clay layer, a deliberately constructed wicking bed reservoir, or simply a deeper soil horizon that escapes the rapid evaporation affecting the surface. If you are working in a standard garden bed, burying the bottom tip at a depth of 25 to 30 centimeters is usually ideal. At this depth, the soil typically retains residual moisture long after the top few centimeters have baked dry in the sun. The cotton towel will draw that moisture up, generating around 18 centimeters of active upward capillary lift in typical garden soil conditions. This means the moisture is transported directly into the critical 7 to 15 centimeter depth range, which is exactly where most vegetables and shallow-rooted plants have their primary feeder roots. The dynamics of this system adjust based on the surrounding soil moisture. If the soil is moderately humid from recent rain, the matrix potential of the soil is low. The soil does not demand water, so the towel remains neutral, holding moisture but not rapidly transferring it. However, if the soil is bone dry, the tension spikes dramatically. The desiccated soil aggressively pulls moisture horizontally from the adjacent cotton fibers. As the upper portion of the towel dries out, it rapidly pulls more water up from the deeper, wetter tip to replace it. This is an automated system powered by physics, delivering water precisely when and where the soil tension demands it. A cross-section taken after 14 days typically shows the moisture zone is actively maintained in raised beds and container gardens, which notoriously dry out from the top down. By burying the bottom tip of the cotton towel deep into the lower third of the container, you bypass the rapid evaporation zone. The capillary lift pulls the water back up to the surface roots, meaning you can water the container deeply once, and the towel will regulate the moisture distribution for days. By understanding how capillary action works in woven cellulose, you transform a waste product into a valuable hydrological tool. You stop wasting surface water on evaporation and start utilizing the deep moisture reserves that already exist in your soil profile. The cotton towel is a brilliant demonstration of fluid dynamics, ready to be deployed vertically to pull water upward. The 18 centimeters of capillary lift is a physical reality that you can harness to keep your soil hydrated from the bottom up long after the surface is dried. Have you ever noticed how an old rag can pull water out of a bucket if left dangling over the edge, and what other household items might work as a wicking layer? Let me know your thoughts below.